In this video, and what we might term step 6, I will talk about how to work on the emotional dimension and on the vital or sensory motor dimension. With the witness and intellect, we focused on self-awareness, discernment and knowledge. With feelings and vitality, the aim is development of will, authenticity and flexibility. The reason why it is better to start with development of awareness, discernment and knowledge is because that foundation, if done correctly, will make the development of will, authenticity and flexibility easier with the support of a new attitude born from greater understanding and insights. But a lot of times all this goes together, which is why this time I won't make separate steps for working on emotions and vitality. Remember that the more you express yourself in ways that you are not used to, the more you become aware of yourself. In that way you practice both will and awareness. The definition of will is doing something you would normally not do. Going beyond your unconscious habits, social concerns, and even beyond your own preferences. Because these limit your capacity for free will, flexibility and creativity. Being able to take action or take responsibility means nothing if the action taken is merely reflexive, habitual, forced on you by social fear or shame, or the result of animal desire. It may look like you are in control of yourself and have will, but you don't. Because something else determined your action, such as conditioned patterns, the norms of society, or internal desires that pushed you in that direction. If you are the one determining your action, then you must be aware of it. You must say to yourself something like this: yes, this is my usual habit, but I choose to give in to it because I like it. Yes, this is what people around me expect of me, but I choose to do it because it is easier this way. Yes, these desires are my animal nature that I did not choose, but I give in to them because animal nature has its own intelligence and I trust in its guidance. In other words, you take responsibility for the action by owning up to it and speak the truth about the action and your inner observer's relation to it. It also means that you can control yourself when situations and circumstances change, so that you can go from habit to conscious control and from following your desires in the moment to examining where they will lead long term, at times finding advantage in going along with the movement of something else. This requires an interplay between conscious awareness and the ability to break habits and preferences. With this type of awareness and self-control, you also don't complain or make excuses for your actions. Complaining and making excuses or throwing accusations around are habits, not strength of will. Unless you were seriously coerced, you did it because you also wanted to do it, or chose to give in. This is part of being authentic and honest, since it is rare that there is only one choice. Even saying that you don't know what came over you is not an excuse, since it means that you don't have self-knowledge. By not allowing excuses, it forces you to pay more attention on self-knowledge and being conscious. Fighting injustice is okay, as long as it is done consciously and responsibly, not reactively and projecting all responsibility onto some specific group of offenders. We will not progress anywhere until we are capable of recognizing destructiveness also in ourselves. Psychological energies like emotions are different from the physical body. If someone cuts you with a knife unprovoked, then indeed they are the cause of your injury. You have no control over physical injuries. Emotional injuries, however, can be controlled and defended against. Especially those emotional injuries that are unrelated to physical abuse. In fact, very often, emotional injuries are entirely caused by your own identification with things. For example, cultures focused on honor create themselves the condition for a lot of emotional injuries. If someone insults you, or insults your mother, or insults your religion, or disrespects your social position, or you have a daughter who loses her virginity before marriage, and you feel shamed and injured, then you or your culture have chosen to get upset and injured. You have manufactured it, or kept it going, and you lack the strength to control it, to be the better man and let it go. If you or your culture had chosen differently, you would not have had to feel those emotional injuries. But there are other emotional injuries, often related to physical injuries done to you or to someone else, that are much more difficult to ignore, control or defend against. You might need a broader philosophical perspective, understanding the law of accident or creational causality, so that you don't waste energy holding on to resentment against whoever caused you pain. People who believe in a powerful and just God often lose faith or begin to resent God if such a thing happens. This is because the worldview of a protective, just God created a delusion about reality it could not maintain, or the person begins to blame themselves and think God must have punished them for some sin or lack of faith. Whatever worldview you choose, make sure that it doesn't risk creating more delusions or disappointments, or becomes needlessly pessimistic and resentful. Especially if you want to teach this worldview to others, because there are worldviews that might work for you, but may not work for others. Some people can convince themselves that the universe is all loving and just, and that might work for them. Even pure inventions and delusions can make some people happy in their bubble. But if people with trauma have a hard time buying it, then you cannot blame them. If you want to have a real relationship with others, then you should settle for something more down to earth. Another technique to handle this type of trauma is to simply cry out or scream out. Don't repress it, ignore it, or dwell on it in your mind. Simply express it. Express it until you are tired of it, until you are empty of it, until it has been transformed into strength. Emotional pain remains a phantom hanging over you until you give it expression. The reason why sensitive energy types like magnitudinum, abstractum and misericordum often hold on to pain is because they dwell on it too much without giving it proper expression. These types may have had the advantage in the early stages of development, waking up to problems faster, but they risk getting stuck when trying to deal with internal pain and emotional wounds. A type like Excidium, who tends to express how they feel right in the moment without holding back, often get over their issues right then and there. So this is a step where Excidium has the advantage and can get through faster than the more inhibited types. So you transform and control your emotions through a combination of understanding, non-attachment and self-expression. You cannot transform or control your emotions by simply deciding you want to be happy, positive and full of love. It requires training, practice, consciousness and getting in touch with your darker and unhappy side first. Otherwise, your emotions will not rest on a stable foundation. Every part of you must be integrated first, so that your worldview, knowledge, memory, experience, attitude, desires, energies, thoughts, feelings and habits are all on the same page and won't crumble when you encounter resistance. You must have preparation beforehand, because once you crumble and fall into hate and anger, it is too late. Expressing your pain is close to authenticity and expressing your nature in general. Social norms usually want you to repress both your genuine pain and your authentic nature in favor of stoic obedience to model behavior or expressing artificial pain that serves the culture. This does damage to our emotions and our sense of substance, and it interferes with consciousness. When love and happiness is expected as a duty, it feels fake and drains our energy. Happiness comes from a sense of being free to express ourselves, and we cannot develop true love and compassion until we feel happy and liberated with ourselves first. Because as long as we are not happy with ourselves, or by ourselves, we will look for things and people to complete us. By experiencing ourselves fully through conscious expression, we don't feel so empty. And when we don't feel empty, we can begin to give more of ourselves to others instead of always craving and avoiding things. Honesty and authenticity is independence. As long as you imitate anything, you don't have independent thoughts. So developing your vital and expressive dimension is also developing independence. It is the best antidote to cultural hypnosis or becoming a drone. Imitation often has to do with admiration, but it has the risk of making you partial, dependent, and attached to what you admire. And then your actions are not independent. You are controlled by something else. Practice the courage to be more honest or to be different. Try to do the opposite of what everyone else does. But don't base your new expressions on imitation of something else. Don't go against one culture by simply adopting another one. Don't invent something bizarre that is unnatural or unusual for the sake of being unusual. Don't expect a new hairstyle or a new outfit to do the work of being different or expressing your nature for you. When we are honest and natural, we are actually not all that different from one another. Culture, fashion, education, traditions, and ideals are what create big differences, not nature. If you are honest, you will find that there are always others like you, and real communication can take place. Expressing oneself is satisfying, and the basis for real contact and communication with others. If there is a social mask in the way, then contact and communication becomes formal, rigid, and inauthentic. Also, when practicing self-expression, don't just express what you usually express. Express what you haven't expressed. Express it completely, and try to express it as soon as it arises in your consciousness. Even if you know your thoughts or desires are ridiculous and unreasonable, once you have expressed extreme fixations or unhealthy thoughts, you begin to calm down and have more healthy and mature thoughts and desires to express. If we can recognize and remember our own folly and shortcomings, we can tolerate other people a bit easier. So many things people criticize other people for are superficial or hypocritical. Also, don't forget to keep your body healthy. Various addictions can damage your body, and addictions are usually caused by unhappiness and self-rejection. When you are doing ordinary things, try to do them consciously and with reverence. Use a creative attitude to find meaning and interest in mundane things, because while habits can be efficient and easy, they lack the nourishment and substance that comes with attention. The three main techniques to functional behavior are non-attached observation, genuine self-expression, and creating new habits to counter dysfunctional habits. You can probably do well focusing on just one of these techniques or practices, but I would recommend combining and experimenting with all three. And remember that creating new habits does not only mean behavior, but also new habits of thinking or remembering. And the blockage to developing your emotions, sense of satisfaction, and capacity for responsible action is believing that the goal is to feel permanent, loving, happy, euphoric ecstasy, or something similar, to come across as spiritual, holy, or without human flaws, or lacking self-knowledge and not being prepared for the consequences of pre-development actions to still remain with you. There are more specific techniques and tools and practices that I might talk about in a separate video. I know that psychedelics can be used to heal trauma and give expression to hidden aspects of ourselves, but such tools might not be widely available to everyone and might require careful guidance. I focus on what I know can work from my own practice and experiences, and also bring attention to things that people often don't talk about. So hopefully what I have said will make sense and be of some use.